Hi, guys. Today we're going to be listening to Lesson 4, The Wild Wood. As we do this, if we're interrupted by the intercom, please be patient. If at any time you need to pause the video to take care of some of the work, please feel free to do so and then rejoin us. The first thing we want to do is look at our vocabulary words that are included in today's story. The first word is domestic. It's an adjective meaning relating to a house or household items. The second word is evasively. It's an adverb meaning not entirely truthful or direct in order to avoid something unpleasant. The third word is feeble. It is an adjective meaning weak or having little energy. Fourth is heartily, also an adverb meaning enthusiastically. And then finally, we have postpone, used as a verb to mean to put off or to reschedule for a later time or to delay. You might hear postpone as postpones, postponed, or postponing. Who can remind me what are the 4 seasons of the year? Winter, spring, summer, and fall. How do the changing seasons affect animals and plants? That's a good question. So we have to think. During the winter, some animals will hibernate. Some plants will kind of wither away, withdraw their sap. Other times, they'll come to life and spring back into full color. Which seasons have not yet occurred in the wind and the willows? Fall and winter. Which season will come next in our story? Or seasons will come next? There you go, fall and winter. You can see here some characteristics that might pertain to each of the seasons. We have spring, summer, fall, and then winter. So what have we learned so far? What is the difference in dialogue and narration? Remember, the difference with dialogue is it's often set apart with quotation marks, and it's what the characters actually say in the story, their exact words. Narration is going to be all of the other things in the story to help us make sense of the story. It's going to give us background information, tell us kind of what's going on around the characters. So narration is not going to be used with quotation marks. Kind of gives us the bonus information. What is perspective? Remember, perspective is how someone sees or experiences something, usually looking through their eyes. Listen to today's read aloud for a shift in perspective. Remember that perspective is a literary tool like dialogue and narration. It lets us know from whose experience we are learning more about the story. Just like dialogue, it can shift from one character to another. So let's make some predictions based on our information that we've already learned. This story is called The Wild Wood. Remember the other day when Rat and Mole were looking up the river and they could see the wild wood over on the other bank and wondered about it. Here we have a map of where the location is actually in relation to Rat's house and Mole's house and other things that are going on in our story. So listen for seasonal characteristics, listen to hear where the shift in perspective takes place, and listen to see if your predictions are correct about the wild wood.
Miss Raines, if you're still in the building, could you call the office, please?
Mole unsuccessfully trying to convince Rat to go with him to visit Mr. Badger. The mole had long wanted to meet the badger, but the water rat always had a reason to postpone the occasion. Badger, "I'll turn up some day or other," the rat would say. "Couldn't you ask him to dinner?" said the mole. "He wouldn't come," replied the rat simply. "Well then, supposing we go and call on him," suggested the mole. "Oh, he wouldn't like that at all," said the rat, quite alarmed. "Besides, he lives in the middle of the wild wood." "Well, supposing he does like it," said the mole. "You told me the wild wood was all right." "I know so it is," replied the rat evasively. "But he wouldn't be at home at this time of year anyhow." The mole had to be content with this. Summer had left, taking the warmth and sweet fragrances with it. The autumn and winter days brought cold winds and glistening frost. No one thought about boating, and so with time to ponder, the mole began to think once more of Badger. In the wintertime, the rat slept a great deal. He retired early and rose late. Consequently, the mole had plenty of spare time on his hands. One afternoon, while the rat rested in his armchair before the fire, he decided he would explore the wild wood and perhaps meet Mr. Badger. Mole sets out on his own to visit Mr. Badger in the wild wood. It was a cold, still afternoon when he slipped out of the warm parlor. The country lay bare and leafless around him. The mole liked the country like this, stripped of its finery, and so with great cheerfulness of spirit he pushed on towards the wild wood. There was nothing to alarm him at first. Then, as his journey progressed, he moved into a shadowy world in which trees crouched nearer and the holes in various tree trunks gaped like hideous mouths. The dusk descended steadily. Then the faces began. It was over his shoulder that he first thought he saw a face. When he turned and confronted it, the thing had vanished. He quickened his pace. He passed another hole, and a little narrow face flashed up. If he could only get away from the holes, he thought, there would be no more faces. He swung off the path and plunged into the untrodden places of the wood. If Mole plunged into the untrodden places, that means he went deeply into the parts of the wood that were off the trail and not walked on. Then the whistling began. Very faint it was. When first he heard it, but somehow it made him hurry forward. Then the pattering began. He thought it was only falling leaves at first. Then, as it grew, he knew it was the pat, pat, pat of little feet. The mole began to run. He ran up against things. He fell over things. At last, he took refuge in the hollow of an old beech tree. Terrified and exhausted, the mole lay there trembling. Meanwhile, the rat, warm and comfortable, dozed by his fireside. It was not until a coal in the fire slipped and sent up a spurt of flames that he awoke. He immediately looked round for his companion, but the mole was not there. He listened for a time. The house seemed very quiet. Then he called, "Moley!" several times, and receiving no answer, got up and went out into the hall. The mole's cap was missing from its peg. His Wellington boots were also gone. Wellington boots are waterproof boots that became popular because a famous British man, the Duke of Wellington, wore them. The rat left the house and found the mole's tracks leading straight to the wild wood. The rat stood in deep thought. Then he re-entered the house, strapped a belt around his waist, and shoved a brace of pistols into it. Finally, he picked up a stout cudgel and set off for the wild wood. A brace of pistols means 2 pistols. A cudgel is a club or stick. Why do you think Rat is taking these things with him? Rat finds Mole in a tree hollow in the wild wood. It was already getting towards dusk when he reached the wood. As he moved among the trees, the rat looked about for his friend. Here and there, wicked little faces popped out of holes, but vanished immediately at the sight of such a well-armed creature. The rat called out to his friend for an hour or
Miss
more.
Beth, if you're in the building, would you come by the office, please?
When at last he heard a little answering cry. Guided by the sound, he made his way to an old beech tree with a hole in it. From out of the hole came a feeble voice saying, "Ratty, is that really you?" The rat crept into the hole, and there he found the mole. "Oh, Rat," he cried, "I've been so frightened." "Oh, I quite understand," said the rat soothingly. "We riverbankers hardly ever come here by ourselves." "Surely the brave Mr. Toad wouldn't mind coming here by himself, would he?" inquired the mole. "Old Toad," said the rat, laughing heartily. "He wouldn't show his face here alone for anything." The mole was greatly cheered by the sound of the rat's laughter. "Now then," said the rat, "we really must make a start for home." "Dear Ratty," said the poor mole, "you must let me rest a while longer." "Oh, all right," said the rat. "It's nearly pitch dark now, and there ought to be a bit of a moon later." So the mole snuggled down and went to sleep, while the rat lay, patiently waiting, with a pistol in his paw. When at last the mole woke up, the rat said, "Now then, I'll just take a look outside and see if everything's quiet, and then we really must be off." He went to the entrance and put his head out. "What's up, Ratty?" asked the mole. "Snow is up," replied the rat briefly, "or rather down." The mole came and crouched beside him, and looking out, saw that a gleaming carpet of fine powder was springing up everywhere. "Well, it can't be helped," said the rat. "We must make a start. The worst of it is, I don't exactly know where we are, and now this snow makes everything look so very different." Mole and rat lost on a snowy night in the wild wood. It did indeed. Nevertheless, they set out bravely. An hour or two later, they realized they were lost. They sat down on a fallen tree trunk to rest. "We can't sit here very long," said the rat. The snow will soon be too deep for us to wade through." He peered about him and considered. "Look here," he went on. "There's a dell down there in front of us. Let's make our way down into that and try to find some sort of shelter." So once more they plodded onward as they searched for a corner that was dry. The mole tripped and fell forward on his face. "Oh, my leg!" he cried. "Oh, my poor shin!" "Poor old mole," said the rat kindly. "You don't seem to be having much luck today. Let's have a look at the leg." "I must have tripped over a hidden branch or a stump," said the mole miserably. "It's a very clean cut," said the rat, examining it. "It looks as if it was made by a sharp edge of something made of metal." "Well, never mind what's done it," said the mole, forgetting his grammar in his pain. "It hurts just the same. Whatever done it." Mole is not using good grammar. What is the correct way to say this? Whatever has done it. But the rat, after carefully tying up the leg with his handkerchief, was busy scraping in the snow. He scratched and shoveled while the mole waited impatiently. Suddenly, the rat cried, "Hooray!" "But what have you found, Ratty?" asked the mole. "Come and see," said the delighted rat. The mole hobbled up to the spot and had a good look. "Well," he said last, slowly, "I see it right enough. A door scraper." "Well, what of it?" A door scraper is a small metal frame located near a front door on which people can scrape the mud off of their shoes before entering a house. "But don't you see what it means?" cried the rat. "Of course I see what it means," replied the mole. "It means that some very careless person has left his door scraper lying about in the middle of the wild wood." "Oh dear," cried the rat in despair. "Here, stop arguing and come on and dig." And he set to work again and made the snow fly in all directions. After some further effort, a very shabby doormat lay exposed to view. "There, what did I tell you?" exclaimed the rat. "Absolutely nothing," replied the mole, with perfect truthfulness. "You seem to have found another piece of domestic litter." "Do you mean to say," cried the excited rat, "that this doormat doesn't tell you anything?" "Really, rat," said the mole, "who ever heard of a doormat telling anyone anything? They simply don't do it. Doormats know their place." "Now look here, you thick-headed beast," replied the rat, really angrily. "Keep digging if you want to sleep dry and warm tonight." At long last, at Mr. Badger's front door, the rat, using his cudgel, attacked a snowbank with great ferocity. The mole scraped busily too. Some 10 minutes later, the rat's cudgel struck something that sounded hollow. He called the mole to come and help him. Before long, their efforts were rewarded. For there, in the side of a snowbank, stood a little door. An iron bell pull hung by the side. Below the bell, on a small brass plate, were the moonlit words, "Mr. Badger." A bell pull is an old-fashioned doorbell. Pulling on the bell pull causes bells inside the house connected to the pull to ring, letting the homeowners know someone's at the front door. So here's the bell pull. The mole fell backwards on the snow. "Rat," he cried, you're a wonder. You knew that if there was a door scraper, there was bound to be a doormat. If I only had your head, Ratty." "But as you haven't," interrupted the rat, "I suppose you're going to sit on the snow all night and talk? Get up at once and hang on to that bell pull while I hammer. Do you think Mr. Badger is at home?" We'll have to tune in tomorrow to find out. So here's our word work. Our word is postpone. Remember, postpone means putting something off or rescheduling something until later. We have to postpone the baseball game until the rain stops. Can you think of a time when you or someone else had to postpone something? Be sure to use the word postpone in your sentence. We had to postpone, you fill in the blank, because what happened? What part of speech is the word postpone? Remember from the beginning? Tomorrow we'll be listening